Unexpected love. On Christmas Eve. How one late mechanic inspired an amazing millionaire to wait. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, his hands smeared with grease as he hunched over the engine of a weathered pickup truck. The familiar scent of motor oil lingered in the air, an unwelcome reminder of the financial struggles threatening to swallow his father's garage whole. Each ring of the bell above the door sent a jolt of hope through him, but customers had become scarce. The townsfolk didn't see him. They only saw the shiny banners of modern businesses sparkling down the road. He felt like a ghost in a shell of dreams that had once been vibrant and full of life. Every day melted into one long cycle of repairing engines and staring at bills, a relentless reminder that keeping his father's legacy alive was turning into an impossible task. The overhead light flickered like his dwindling dreams. Was it too late to expand his family business? Sure, the idea had danced in his mind, but with every red ink mark that spilled across his financial statements, it felt less and less attainable. As he worked, doubts pressed against his chest, shadows of shame wrapping around him like a second skin. What if he failed? What if he let down everyone who had counted on him? Jack tightened his grip on the wrench, his knuckles white, a physical manifestation of his mounting pressure. Then, on the eve of Christmas, the low hum of his work was interrupted as a sleek luxury car rolled to a stop just outside the garage. Confident yet graceful, the driver emerged, and Jack couldn't help but admire her. Sarah, a successful entrepreneur draped in elegant winter attire, exuded poise that stood in stark contrast to his grease-stained flannel and worn-out jeans. The vehicle was clearly a symbol of affluence, and as he approached, feelings of inadequacy drummed in his chest. Here she was, a glittering figure weaving in and out of high-stakes meetings, and he was just a mechanic clinging to dreams of making ends meet. Before he could retreat into his own thoughts, Sarah smiled at him, an invitation to bridge the gap between their worlds. As he crouched by her car, Jack couldn't shake the absurdity of the moment. What could she, surrounded by social grandeur, possibly want from someone like him? Uncertainty slackened his muscles, creating an ache that ran deeper than just financial instability. Suddenly, he found himself entertaining snippets of conversation spilling out between them, laughter somehow binding their disparate lives. "So do you fix a lot of broken dreams, too?" she joked, and he chuckled, but inside he felt exposed, his life laid bare for her to dissect. Was he just a passing face in her world, a fleeting distraction before she returned to her high-profile gala? As she shared her story, Jack recognized the hollowness woven through her success, each sparkle of her life blinding yet cold. His own struggles felt heavier, a tangled mess of shame and determination that hardly matched the allure of the life she led. Before they could delve deeper, Sarah's phone rang, shattering the moment and plunging Jack's heart back into uncertainty. He could see her posture shift, caught between a sense of duty and an unexpected yearning for something real. "I forgot about the gala," she murmured, her brow furrowed as if she were deciding the fate of the universe, pieces of her dreams pressing down on her. The pressure intensified around Jack. "You don't have to go," he found himself saying, desperation threading through his voice. Could she really choose a glitzy evening over this raw connection, this chance to explore a bond far beyond material wealth? Jack's heart raced with unspoken possibility, each beat amplifying the weight of the moment. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The air thickened with tension as Jack's statement hung between them, his pulse thrumming in his ears. Would she view him as a roadblock? Or had he, in that moment of vulnerability, revealed the very crux of what he believed? That true success wasn't bound to dollar signs, but wrapped in depth and authenticity. As Sarah wrestled with her choices, He sensed the crossroads they stood at. And Jack's heart sank with the understanding that even in this vivid moment of connection, she might still choose the life that suffocated her. As seconds stretched like hours, Jack respected the moment, hoping he could find the courage to urge her towards a path of uncertainty and warmth instead of the glitter that seemed to leave her unfulfilled. All around him, Christmas Eve wrapped the world in magic and mystery, a whisper of possibilities that neither of them could yet grasp. The silence stretched, thickening the air between them, and Jack felt the weight of his own voice reverberate painfully in the stillness. The vibrant charm of the evening dimmed as uncertainty flickered in Sarah's eyes. He could almost feel the pull of her other world, one filled with gala events and endless expectations, suffocating in its opulence. Yet here he was, hoping to draw her back into the authenticity of genuine connection he had felt since their conversation began. She hesitated, gnawing on her lower lip, weighing options he could scarcely comprehend. Could he truly be a solution to anything in her polished life? He hated the doubt that crept back into his mind, threatening to cloud the brief moment of connection they had shared. But as he looked at her, something stirred within him. A need to assert that this was not just an introduction, but an opportunity. A pivotal moment that could somehow redirect their lives. "Look," he ventured tentatively. "This place..." He gestured around the garage. "It's more than just a business for me. It's a legacy, a piece of my father's dream. And yes, things are tough, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's about authenticity, even when it feels like nobody's looking." With every word, he felt a spark of conviction ignite. Maybe he didn't have the affluence she was accustomed to, but what he had was rich in another way. Experiences and truths that could bridge their very different realities. Sarah's gaze softened, and the initial tension of his admission began to dissolve into something palatable. "I already admire that about you," she whispered. And Jack realized that his humanity shone more brightly than he had ever allowed himself to believe. As they exchanged further stories, sharing snippets of their hopes and failures, Jack found himself captivated by her authenticity too. The vulnerability barely masked by her polished exterior. Through that connection, he began to see that Sarah's path was paved with burdens he hadn't anticipated, and perhaps they weren't as far apart as he initially thought. "Maybe I don't have it all figured out," he admitted. "But I'm figuring it out, day by day. If something doesn't work, I just try again." There was a raw honesty in his voice that not only surprised her, but ignited something in Jack he hadn't known was flickering beneath the surface. The fear that had held him captive, keeping him chained to the stress of looming bills, began to ebb. He realized now that facing his own struggles boldly was his true role. Not just as a mechanic, but as a man determined to craft his future. As their laughter faded into comfortable silence, Sarah seemed to grapple with a deeper internal conflict. Jack watched as her eyes flickered between the garage filled with warmth and possibility and the cold, affluent world outside. He wanted to peel away that hesitation, to reveal the joy of stepping into the unknown. But just as the budding connection surged with promise, her phone buzzed again, a sharp reminder of the life she had temporarily set aside. This time, however, she didn't reach for it. Instead, she met his gaze, a flicker of rebellion sparking behind her deep brown eyes. "What if I did stay?" she asked, the question hanging in the air with electrifying promise. Jack felt his heart race at the thought, the notion of defying the expectations that clamored for her attention. He had been lost in the mundane for so long. The idea of daring to embrace something new electrified him. But the clock was ticking, and he sensed she would have to make a choice that would shape both their destinies. As the weight of the moment enveloped them once more, Jack felt a rush of urgency. He had shared his truth, his vulnerabilities. Now he had to push beyond his comfort zone, just like Sarah might be doing. What would he say to further encourage her? How could he articulate the immense potential of exploring life outside the familiar glamour that surrounded her? But before he could speak again, Sarah finally picked up her phone. He felt a part of him retreat, worried that, once again, the connection would slip away. Yet as she answered, the fire of determination ignited within him. He had to challenge her to stay, not just with words but with actions that proved he was more than capable of dreaming, of striving for something greater. Jack took a deep breath, preparing to navigate the next course of their conversation, one that could either bind their fates together or risk losing her altogether. The moment hung in uncertainty, but he steeled himself, ready to step boldly into whatever came next. "What if," he began slowly, "we each took a risk tonight? Let's explore what matters to us, together." Her eyes widened as she regarded him, and he could already sense the corridors of possibility opening wide within her. For both of them, an unfamiliar path glimmered in the distance. The real question loomed. Would they dare to step away from everything they thought they appreciated in order to discover something greater? And just as the thought settled in his mind, a familiar tension flared, raising the stakes higher than ever before. The moment of truth felt imminent, drawing them closer to the decisions that could change their lives forever. The moment Sarah returned to the conversation, her phone tucked away, Jack's heart surged with hope. But the mix of exhilaration and dread danced within him, threatening to unravel the fragile connection they had begun to weave. He felt as though they stood on a precipice, staring into an abyss filled with uncertainty, and yet the allure of what lay beyond was intoxicating. "Together," Sarah echoed softly, her voice almost a whisper. The idea seemed to pulse in the air around them, electric and alive. But could they truly navigate the unknown side by side? Jack wanted to assure her that yes, they could. He needed to summon every ounce of courage within him. "Yeah, I want to challenge both of us, to see what happens when we step outside our comfort zones," he said, keeping his eyes firmly on hers, searching for a sign that she felt the same pull. "I know it's scary, but isn't that where real growth happens?" She searched his face, her expression softening further. The reservations that had lingered were evident, but beneath them, an urge to break free seemed to bubble to the surface. That rebellion he had sensed earlier flickered again, igniting an ember of hope inside him. Jack took a step closer, the space between them a chasm that had begun to feel surmountable. "Let's leave the expectations behind, even if just for a little while. We can find a place together, somewhere that welcomes possibility instead of judgment." "What do you mean by that?" Sarah asked, and the subtle intrigue in her tone sent a rush of energy through him. "Let's go grab coffee at that little diner downtown. My treat." He felt a surge of his old self, the casual ease he often radiated before life's weight began to anchor him down. "It's not glamorous, but it's genuine. People here are real, and the coffee is strong enough to jumpstart your soul." For the first time, he saw a flicker of amusement dance in her eyes, almost as if she were imagining the paradox of a mechanic enticing $1 million socialite into a humble diner. "You think I could blend in?" "Yes, you could," Jack said confidently. "And you'd find stories there that resonate. You don't have to live like a character in a novel at every moment." She looked away for a moment, glancing at the exit, and he could sense the internal battle raging in her mind. The call of her affluent life was powerful, yet Jack recognized that in this moment, he'd awakened something in her, an interest in authenticity over appearances. "I do feel like a character sometimes," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But pretending is exhausting, and I don't want to be alone in that anymore." Jack's heart pounded with her revelation. It was a quiet admission that matched his own struggles with authenticity. The connection ignited a determination within him. "Then let's be in this together. No masks, just us." Her eyes finally found his once more. The weight of their combined introspection filled the air, a palpable tension swirling around them like the warm air in the garage. This was an opportunity he couldn't let slip away. He could no longer shy away from the unknown. He needed to demonstrate that he was more than just a mechanic tethered to a failing business. "I'll stop talking," Jack said, an impulsive flash of insight surfacing. "Let's go before you change your mind." He took a step back, extending a hand toward the garage door as an invitation to break free from the familiar. To his surprise, she smiled, a mixture of uncertainty and excitement, and slipped her hand into his. As they stepped outside, Jack felt the cold air wrap around them, the winter chill a stark contrast to the warmth they had shared moments before. It was exhilarating, sending a rush through his veins, stirring his senses as they crossed to her attractive and immaculate car. How many times had he felt pressed into a mold that didn't fit? How many decisions did he need to challenge to claim his identity? "Let's take this journey one step at a time," Jack said playfully, stealing glances at their surroundings as they made their way across the parking lot. "I promise to show you the unpredictability of a life lived authentically." With each passing second, he became more determined to embody the change he sought to inspire in Sarah. They were both on the precipice, ready to leap into something that would reshape their worlds. But before they could close the distance to her sleek vehicle, a familiar voice called out, cutting through the crisp night. "Jack, there you are. I've been looking for you." The interruption sent a ripple of confusion through him. He turned to find Tony, the garage foreman, striding toward them with an urgent expression, a note clutched in his hand. Jack's heart sank. Was this the distraction he had feared? A reminder of his responsibilities and looming obligations? This encounter jolted him back into reality, crashing waves of thoughts and emotions through his mind. Was the possibility of an authentic connection worth pursuing if the demands of his life threatened to pull him back? As Tony approached, he caught Sarah's eye, and in that brief glance, he saw the flicker of vulnerability return. Would they both decide to prioritize the relationship taking shape over the rituals of their separate worlds? The answer seemed just out of reach, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Jack's next words could either invoke a clear path forward or plunge them both back into the walls of their old lives, a choice that loomed larger than anything they'd faced thus far. Would he face this interruption head-on, or allow himself to get swept away into the mundane? And amidst the uncertainty, the next chapter of their connection hung precariously, waiting to unfold. Jack felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him as he turned to face Tony. The energy pulsating between him and Sarah began to wane, diminished by the yawning distance of obligations and responsibilities that clawed at him from the corners of his mind. A primal instinct to shield this newfound connection surged through him, battling the pull of duty that threatened to drag him back into the depths of routine. "What's going on, Tony?" he asked, keeping his tone steady despite the nerves twisting in his stomach. Tony looked agitated, his brow furrowed in concern. "We've got an urgent situation. The team found a major leak in the oil line of a truck that just came in. If we don't fix it fast, we could have a major disaster on our hands. I could really use your help." Jack's heart sank as he weighed his options. He could feel the flicker of disappointment in Sarah's eyes as she began to comprehend the reality of his life. Here they were, on the cusp of something new, and he was suddenly thrust back into the monotonous grind of his day job. The allure of leaving it all behind for authenticity felt tantalizingly out of reach now. He hesitated, the weight of his commitments hanging heavy on his conscience. This was the life he had fought so hard to build, yet he was acutely aware that it often left him feeling hollow. Could he abandon Sarah at this pivotal moment? What kind of message would that send? "Jack?" Tony's voice pulled him from his thoughts, shadowed by urgency. "I'll be right there," Jack replied, forcing a sense of clarity through the chaos. He turned to Sarah, whose expression was a canvas of disappointment swirling with understanding. "I have to handle this, but I want to make a promise. This isn't over. I'll be back as soon as I can." "Will you?" Sarah asked, her voice almost trembling with uncertainty. "Or will this be just another excuse?" Her challenge pierced through him. He could sense her struggle with trust, and suddenly everything felt heavier. His past mistakes, the years spent clinging to safety, and the fear of disappointment he had unwittingly inflicted on both himself and those around him. "I won't let you down, Sarah," he said, meeting her gaze with a newfound intensity. "This connection we have, it's worth fighting for. Just give me this time. Let me prove to you that I'm choosing a different path." As he jogged toward the garage, Jack felt a mix of determination and despair. The sound of tools clanking filled his ears, drowning out the rhythm of his thoughts. He arrived at the bay to find the mechanics engaged with the truck, their voices laced with urgency. "Jack, thank God you're here," a fellow mechanic called out, relief evident on his face. "We need your expertise if we're going to fix this in time." As Jack assessed the problem, his heart was still tethered to Sarah, lingering in the fragile excitement they had just begun to forge. He worked methodically, each movement reminiscent of the clarity he had felt while speaking with her. The sound of wrenches and hissing air filled the space, but within him stirred uncertainty. Was he building barriers instead of bridges? With each piece of equipment he handled, he reflected on his inner conflict. The notion that taking on this responsibility was also an act of growth. However, leaving Sarah waiting in the cold outside felt distinctly like a retreat. The memories of his struggles with isolation and the pain of unsatisfactory encounters loomed over him, but they also became fuel to emerge from this moment intact and stronger. After an hour of sustained focus, and with the leak now repaired, Jack stepped back to assess the situation. Just as he was catching his breath, Tony sidled up alongside him. "You good?" "Yeah, I'm great," Jack mumbled, still grappling with the emotional aftermath of the decision he had made. "Just know that you're more than capable. This company needs a leader who can juggle responsibilities, not just someone who fixes cars," Tony advised, eyeing Jack closely. The words struck a chord, igniting a realization within him. Jack could be more than just a mechanic. He could be a catalyst for change, both in his personal and professional life. The roles he held were not mutually exclusive, but rather interconnected parts of a narrative. As he navigated the conversation with Tony, Jack's gaze drifted toward the entrance, where a glimpse of the nighttime chill brought unexpected warmth flooding into him. The thought of Sarah ignited sparks of ambition and determination. "Hey, Tony," he said, voice steadier. "I need to take a break. I have something to do, something urgent." Before Tony could answer, Jack strode through the garage door and into the biting cold night. There was a shift in the air, and his breath came in visible puffs as he hurried back to the parking lot, every step resonating with newfound urgency. But the flicker of hope in Sarah's eyes when he promised to return now sparked a conflict in Jack he hadn't anticipated. Was he running toward something, or fleeing from a part of himself he had yet to confront? As he rounded the corner, prepared to reclaim the connection they had sparked, only time would reveal what truths might lie ahead, echoing in the space between choices. Was he willing to rewrite his story, or would this chapter stall? The cold air felt liberating on Jack's skin as he hurried toward the parking lot, his mind racing with thoughts of Sarah. Every step became an act of defiance against the complacency that had stifled him for so long. He was ready to fight against the narratives that labeled him as just another mechanic, a man destined to navigate a life of monotony. The anticipation built inside him, swirling into focus as he emerged from the shadows of routine and toward the flickering warmth of possibility. Jack's heart quickened when he spotted Sarah leaning against her car, the starlight casting a gentle glow on her face. The earlier mix of disappointment and understanding had transformed into a fragile bloom of hope. He grasped the doorknob of transformation, aware that this moment could define his path forward. "Hey," he called, trying to mask the breathlessness of his urgency. "Jack," she replied, her tone edged with both relief and lingering hesitation. "You came back." "I had to," he said, stepping closer, desperate to bridge the gap between them. "I can't let this moment slip away. There's something real here, something worth fighting for." The flicker in her eyes prompted him to confront unspoken fears. He needed to show her that he was willing to take risks, not just in his career, but in his heart. But even as he felt this surge of determination, he paused, grappling with deeper truths about himself. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" Sarah asked, breaking the silence that fell between them. "I felt you slipping away, back into the shadows of your world." Her question hung heavily in the air, and Jack battled with the unease that it stirred within him. The shadows she mentioned weren't merely figments, they were echoes of doubt, fragments of a past where he often chose safety over connection. "I was scared," he admitted. "I thought I could juggle it all, but it feels different with you. You're inspiring." "Inspiring?" she echoed, a hint of skepticism lacing her voice. "Really?" "Yeah," he insisted, meeting her gaze head-on. "You challenge me to consider what I want beyond this place. I don't want to be a guy who lets opportunities pass by, who stays trapped within walls of my own making." A smirk played on her lips, teasing the tension away. "Then you better start proving that, Jack." Her challenge ignited a deeper determination within him, urging him to articulate his vision, one that blended his professional aspirations with the authenticity he craved in his personal life. "I want to work my way up from being a mechanic to a leader in this company. I want to build something meaningful, not just for me but for everyone here, people who've been stuck in the same routines. It's not just about fixing trucks. It's about leading change." He watched as her expression shifted from skepticism to cautious optimism. Sarah leaned closer, intrigued. "And how do you plan to do that?" "I need to step up. I can start small, take the initiative in mentoring others, streamline our processes, even propose some innovative ideas that challenge how we work. But I can't do this alone. I need support. I need you," he confessed, voice steady despite the vulnerability flooding his system. She considered his words, clearly weighing the sincerity of his intentions. "It's not going to be easy, Jack. You'll face obstacles, people who won't want to change and those who will doubt you." "I know," he replied. "But I won't let fear dictate my choices anymore. I want to show you and myself that I can be more than what I've settled for. I want to make a real impact, and I want you by my side." A moment of silence passed between them, filled with the warmth of shared vulnerability. But as much as he craved recognition and approval, a nagging doubt crept back into his mind. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the very things that drove him to this point become stumbling blocks? Just then, a loud engine roared in the distance, breaking their moment and pulling them back to the reality around them. Jack recoiled from the sound, reminded of the duality of his existence, the world that demanded his attention, and the world he was desperate to create. "I have to go back to work," he said reluctantly, glancing at the garage that felt like both sanctuary and prison. "Then go," Sarah urged, her voice steady but tinged with an unspoken urgency. "But remember what you said. You need to prove it, not just to me but to yourself." With a determined nod, Jack turned back toward the garage, a fire igniting within him. He could tackle the tasks ahead while simultaneously carving out a new path. The driving force propelling him was no longer fear of failure, but rather the promise of growth and connection. As he pushed through the garage doors, the night air still fresh in his lungs, the decision felt concrete. He would lead with purpose, commit to change, not only within the company, but within himself. Yet, the weight of responsibility loomed over him. How would his coworkers respond? Would they welcome his vision, or would the old guard resist his efforts to change? The moment of truth was fast approaching, and with it, a realization that choosing to evolve meant confronting everything he had ever feared. That commitment could unveil both his strengths and vulnerabilities. With purpose in his stride, Jack stepped further into the fray, ready to redefine his path. He was learning to embrace the chaos, but as the reality of his decisions loomed, he questioned. Would he command respect as a leader, or would he falter under the scrutiny of his peers? Determined yet apprehensive, Jack braced himself for the challenges and revelations that awaited him, aware that the path of transformation often came with shadows of uncertainty. Inside the garage, the familiar scent of grease and metal wrapped around Jack as he resumed his duties. Tools clanked gently against each other as he analyzed a heavy-duty truck's engine, but his mind was adrift, tethered tightly to the conversation with Sarah. He could still feel the residual warmth of her presence, a stark contrast to the cold steel surrounding him. The rhythmic hum of machinery faded as he wrestled with the impending sense of responsibility that had settled heavily on his shoulders. Challenges were inevitable. He was acutely aware that leadership required more than just a vision. It meant stepping into unknown territories, confronting critics, and potentially disappointing those who had once only seen him as just a mechanic. As the evening wore on and the hum of the shop intensified, he took a deep breath and reminded himself of his plan. He could no longer shy away from leadership. It was time to speak up, the first step in carving a reputation that spoke of change and innovation. Jack glanced around the shop, noting the faces of his colleagues immersed in the routine, each seemingly resigned to their roles. "Morning, Jack. Got any plans for the weekend?" called out Tom, one of the senior mechanics, breaking Jack's thoughts. "Just some family stuff. Nothing too exciting," he replied, forcing a smile. In truth, the only family he envisioned was a future with Sarah, a life weaving dreams of progress together. But first, he needed to seize the moment here, within these four walls. "All right, team, gather round." Jack's summons surprised even him. The usual casual banter halted as heads turned in his direction. Was he really about to take this leap? As the mechanics congregated, a mix of curiosity and skepticism washed over the group. Jack felt the knot tightening in his stomach, but he pushed aside the fear of judgment. "I've been thinking about ways we can improve our work processes," he began, noting the straightforwardness of his words. "I know we all get stuck in our routines, so I'd like to start sharing some ideas and maybe implement new strategies that can help us work smarter." A murmur rippled through the group, and Jack recognized both interest and skepticism. He chose transparency as his approach. "I want to create a mentoring system where we can help each other learn and grow. Bring out the best in everyone. This isn't just about fixing trucks anymore. It's about building a stronger team." The air thickened with uncertainty. He could feel the doubts cascading through the room. But then he spotted Sarah's image, as if she were standing in his periphery, the light she exuded urging him to stay steadfast. "I understand that this change won't come easy," he continued, meeting the hostile gaze of a few skeptical colleagues. "But if we want to elevate this shop, transform it into something everyone here can be proud of, we need to take that first step together. So, I'm asking for your support." A silence lingered before Tom stepped forward. "You know, it's not as easy as you think, Jack. Some folks have been here a long time. Change? That can ruffle feathers." His heart raced at the challenge. This was what he needed. "I'm counting on that to serve as motivation," Jack replied firmly. "We all have strengths. Let's utilize them. I'm ready to mentor anyone interested. The only way to deepen our skills is to collaborate, to learn from one another." The murmurs multiplied, some more animated than others, and Jack dared to hope they were leaning toward engagement, not rejection. Yet he was painfully aware of the journey still ahead. Would his colleagues embrace this vision, or would they let fear eclipse the potential for growth? As the conversation eventually transitioned into small discussions among the team, Jack felt a flicker of hope. Those first few moments mattered. He had invoked a reaction, however tentative, that he could expand upon. Leaving the room, he fought an internal battle. Encouraged? Yes. But confident? That was far more elusive. The weight of his aspirations clashed with the deep-seated insecurities that had plagued him for years. He stepped outside for a moment of clarity, inhaling the crisp air. In the quiet shadows of evening, he allowed himself a sliver of doubt, but tucked it cautiously away beneath resolve. Jack knew the next few days would challenge him more than he anticipated. As he looked back into the garage, his co-workers now animatedly discussing, he brushed a bead of sweat from his brow. Maybe today wouldn't be the day they rushed to support him. But seeds had been planted. The road ahead would be tumultuous, but with every stride into this uncertainty, a new thought illuminated his mind. Could this be more than just a professional challenge? Coupled with personal aspirations, what if Jack's path wasn't solely about leadership, but rather about uncovering the details of who he truly wanted to be? And as that question loomed large, the lines between personal and professional blurred. What would he discover about himself on this journey? Determined once more, he returned to the garage, ready to face whatever awaited him, knowing that change was often accompanied by fear, but also immense possibility. The thrill of uncertainty and potential surged within him as he prepared for the moments that would define his path, asking not just how he might change the company, but how he might change himself in the process. But before he could confront the next challenge, an unexpected clash echoed within the garage walls that would test more than just his vision. It would test his very values. What was about to unfold would set the tone for the future he dreamed of building. The following day, a heavy blanket of tension enveloped the garage. Jack arrived early, his pulse drumming in sync with the clanking of tools being readied for another grind. He wasn't just preparing for another shift. He was bracing for a sense of confrontation. The whispers from yesterday's meeting lingered in the air like the oily stains on the shop floor. He sensed a collective apprehension, a mix of skepticism and cautious curiosity overshadowing their usual camaraderie. As the other mechanics trickled in, Jack felt their eyes occasionally resting on him, fueled with unspoken doubts about his newfound aspirations. The confidence he had mustered before felt almost flimsy now amidst the familiar faces, those who had always seen him as just one of them. He wrestled with the gnawing insecurity sprouting like weeds in his mind. Did he genuinely have the ability to inspire change? Or was he merely setting himself up for failure? "Morning, Jack. You ready for today's fun?" Tom quipped, a sidelong glance revealing what he likely thought was a harmless tease. Yet, it struck a nerve. "Absolutely. Got a plan," Jack responded, forcing optimism into his voice, though the words tasted sour. He reached for a wrench, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to mask the tightness in his chest. Today was pivotal. He had resolved to engage his colleagues directly, and perhaps even confront Tom's skepticism head-on. The notion of letting doubt consume him was not an option, not when he felt he had ventured too far already. Jack inhaled deeply, steadied his thoughts, and formulated a strategy. "All right, everyone," he called out as lunch approached, gathering the small group around the break room. The mechanics settled into their seats, warm food forgotten for a moment as they turned their focus to him. "Yesterday was just the beginning," Jack announced, sensing rising anticipation and a few lingering frowns. "I realize I'm asking for something that feels different, something that isn't typical for us. But I believe in this team, and I want to prove that anyone can step into a mentoring role, especially those who have been here the longest." He watched as Tom's brow furrowed deeper, the challenge in his eyes blazing. "Look, Jack, not all of us want to play teacher. Some folks are happy just fixing trucks, and that's enough." Jack's heart pounded. He had anticipated pushback but didn't expect such fierce resistance. "I get that. But what if being more than just a mechanic could enhance our skills, increase our efficiency, and even raise shop morale? When the shop does better, we all do better." The challenge unveiled more than his leadership ambitions. It revealed an internal struggle as he sought to anchor his arguments with sincerity. "I'm not naive enough to think everyone has to jump on board. But if just one or two of you decide to share your expertise, we could begin building something extraordinary together." As silence enveloped the room, he directly locked eyes with Tom. "I'm not asking anyone to change overnight. Just consider the benefits of trying something new." Gradually, he noticed the tension begin to thaw, as dialogue sprung between colleagues. Murmurs erupted, some nodding along, others still apprehensive about his vision. A flicker of hope ignited in Jack as he caught Sarah's reflection across the room, her encouraging smile igniting a spark inside. Then, something unexpected happened. "All right, I might be on board if you lead by example," Tom finally said, his tone softer yet measured. "Maybe a trial run? Just don't make it stupid." "Fair enough," Jack grinned, relief flooding through him. "Let's set some time aside this week so we can initiate the first mentorship pairing." As discussions expanded, the room filled with ideas, the initial resistance waning into productive brainstorming. Jack felt invigorated, each moment reinforcing his determination to step up and redefine his role within the team. Yet with every passing minute, uncertainties crept back in. Even as he earned small victories, another voice echoed in his mind. Could he inspire without losing himself in the process? Later that evening, as Jack left the garage, he felt the weight of his ambition and apprehension intertwining. Progress was palpable, but it was equally clear that real transformation was a long road, peppered with confrontation, self-discovery, and judgment. But what if, amid these challenges, he not only became a leader, but found deeper truths about himself, too? As he drifted home, Jack reflected on all these questions, realizing he was on a precipice, the thrill of potential change just around the corner. But the next confrontation awaited. Upon entering his modest apartment, he caught sight of the calendar. Days until the holidays ticked away, reminding him that soon he would have to face not only his emerging leadership role, but the aspects of his life intertwined with his personal dreams. Would he stumble when faced with both the aspirations of his career and the possibility of newfound love? The next morning, Jack woke up with a knot in his stomach. The shadows of doubt loomed large even before he stepped foot into the garage. His role as a leader felt both exhilarating and suffocating, and he found himself wondering if he was truly cut out for the responsibility he had willingly placed on his shoulders. As the sun fought to break through the morning haze, the cold air outside matched the chill in his bones. He arrived early, hoping to gather his thoughts before the others filed in. The familiar clang of tools and muffled chatter echoed in the distance, but all he could focus on was the small, crumpled note from Sarah he had tucked into his pocket. "You're capable of more than you know," it read. Was it just encouragement, or a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered? Determined to rise above the internal conflict, Jack prepared himself for what lay ahead. Today was about action, tangible steps to move past doubt and into inspiration. When the mechanics began to arrive, he greeted each with a nod, feigning confidence even as his heart raced. He stood before his colleagues at the makeshift gathering spot by the old engine lift, a spot marred by years of grease stains and worn mats. "Listen up," he began, voice steadier than he felt. "I know mentorship isn't everyone's cup of tea, and for some of you, it might feel like an additional burden. But if we look at this as not just teaching, but learning together, it can transform us. That's how we grow." Tom crossed his arms, skepticism still etched across his face, while the others listened with a mix of interest and derision. "What do you mean learning together? You're not a teacher, Jack." Jack's heartbeat quickened, but he refused to back down. "Exactly. I don't have all the answers, nor should I. But I want to learn from each of you. It's a team effort. Think of it this way. You have years of experience and skills that can elevate us all. If we share what we know, we can work better, faster, and ultimately create a more rewarding environment for everyone, like achieving that perfect engine tune-up, but multiplied by every individual talent in this garage." He clasped his hands together, watching for signs of engagement. A few brows raised, and he caught Sarah's encouraging smile again, a flicker of support amid the ongoing tension. "What's in it for us?" A younger mechanic finally spoke up, breaking the silence that had enveloped the group. Jack inhaled deeply, steering the conversation. "What if I told you that participating in this plan could mean more time off, better pay, or even just a chance to work on projects that truly interest you?" Tom weighed in, a glimmer of curiosity edging his suspicion. "And if it flops, what then?" "I take responsibility. Jack replied without hesitation. "I'll own it if it fails. But I believe in us. I believe in this team. Just one chance." He felt tension shift slightly, a stem of hesitation blooming into a sliver of hope. After what felt like an eternity, Tom's expression softened. "All right, I'll try it. If we're diving in, then count me in. I won't just be a junior mechanic anymore." Jack's relief was punctuated with the realization that this breakthrough was only beginning. The barriers were slowly collapsing, but the path to genuine acceptance and collaboration remained riddled with uncertainties. Later that day, as the team began to outline their first mentorship session, Jack felt a growing sense of camaraderie. Laughter broke through the stress, but amid it all, an unexpected heaviness settled in his chest. The impending holidays loomed, bringing with them not only the opportunity for professional growth, but personal revelations too. The calendar still hung nearby, now taunting him with its bold red numbers. Recently rekindled feelings for Sarah added layers to his internal tapestry of growth. Would he be able to balance his emotions and ambitions, or would he find himself steamrolled by unforeseen complexities? As he headed home that evening, thoughts streaked through his mind like shadows in the dusk. This wasn't just about leadership. It was about leaning into vulnerability and embracing what he feared most, opening himself up to the possibility of love. With the sun dipping beneath the horizon, Jack felt the undeniable pull of both worlds converging. The stage was set for greater challenges, and an unexpected confrontation awaited him, not just with Tom, but within himself. In navigating through uncharted emotional territory, what hidden truths would he discover about love, courage, and the strength to embrace his dual path? As Jack drove home that evening, the glow of streetlights lined the road, like distant stars glowing through his thoughts. With each turn, the familiar streets morphed into an unfamiliar labyrinth of emotional turbulence. The discussions earlier had felt like a breakthrough, yet the gnawing worry over the feedback from his team lingered like a dark cloud. Were they genuinely on board, or simply appeasing their hesitant leader? Navigating the emotional landscape proved increasingly unnerving as he confronted the burgeoning feelings for Sarah. The easy camaraderie they once shared was now wrapped in tension, charged with unspoken words that hung heavy in the air. Did he really want to pursue this budding connection amidst the chaos of workplace dynamics? Or was he allowing his optimism carefully cultivated in the garage to embolden him, pushing aside the fear of rejection? When Jack reached his modest apartment, the silence felt deafening. He plopped down on the worn couch and stared at the blank television screen, mind racing. Every moment spent at the garage had forged a growing confidence, but this was different. With leadership came the possibility of vulnerability, and the tightness in his chest reminded him of that. He couldn't pin down where this journey was leading him. Was it toward professional triumph, or a romantic misstep? Feeling restless, he reached for a notebook on the coffee table, his makeshift canvas for processing his thoughts. Inspired, he began jotting down fragments of ideas for the mentorship program, hoping to create a space where everyone's strengths could shine, including his own. With each line he wrote, he envisioned ways to break down barriers between himself and the team. Names of familiar mechanics filled the pages, but suddenly they morphed into symbols representing a deeper struggle, a collision between personal ambition and emotional attachment. Drawing upon this conflict, Jack considered the true essence of leadership. When he had spoken to the team that day, it was about growth through shared struggles and mutual respect. Yet he struggled with the realization that he'd need to extend that same vulnerability to Sarah. Could he let her see the raw nerve exposed in moments of doubt? It felt daunting. Could he draw the line between being a leader and letting someone into the chaos behind the scenes? Jack stood, the heart of the matter pulsing in his thoughts. He needed clarity, not just regarding his role at the garage, but also for the possibility of pursuing something more with Sarah. She had already seen glimpses of his struggles, but to lay it all bare felt like standing naked in a storm. Yet, that vulnerability could also sparkle like the first light of dawn after a long night. Days passed, and as Christmas Eve approached, Jack deliberated whether he'd take a step toward Sarah, revealing the truth behind his guarded emotions. Dinner plans had been moved to a local diner, and he could feel the air buzzing with festive energy that somehow added to the weight on his shoulders. In the back of his mind, the promise of a night full of laughter served as both a comfort and a challenge. Challenging himself, Jack realized that he was at a turning point, both in his professional life and his personal one. As he watched snowflakes swirl and dance outside his window, he felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. It was time to confront the growing tension, both in the garage and in his heart. This could be the start of something transformative, or it could lead to inevitable heartache. With a deep breath, Jack grabbed his coat and stepped out into the snowy evening. The streets felt enchanted, cloaked in white, but he was acutely aware that the weight of every decision lay before him. Would he step forward into this new territory, or would he retreat back into the safety of the familiar? As he made his way towards the diner, the meeting place with Sarah, he faced a new internal dialogue. It was no longer about just mentorship or leadership. This was personal. Would he muster the courage to embrace both his ambition and the complexity of his feelings? And then, as he rounded the final corner, a familiar silhouette came into view, and suddenly, the weight of his previous doubts erupted into the air, thrown up like the swirling snow at his feet. This was it, the defining moment that would draw the line between fear and possibility. What unfolds next would uncover hidden truths, but would he end up discovering the strength to embrace vulnerability, or would he feel the bitterness of lost opportunity? As Jack stepped into the cozy diner, the warmth enveloped him like a comforting embrace, momentarily shielding him from the winter chill that clung to his coat. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sweet pastries danced in the air, but his focus was drawn solely to Sarah, seated at a table near the window. The way she illuminated the space around her turned the moment surreal. All doubts of his previous hesitations evaporated in an instant. Tonight was the night he would show her. Not just his determination, but the genuine connection sparking between them. "Hey," he said, sliding into the seat across from her, heart racing with anticipation. "Hey yourself," she replied, a smile spreading across her face. Jack couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration. She looked even more captivating in the softly lit diner, all layers of polish stripped away. "You look great," he said genuinely, his admiration spilling over. Sarah blushed, uncharacteristically shy. "Thanks. I was a little worried about the outfit, considering, well, you know." She gestured vaguely at the diner's homely decor. Jack chuckled lightly, dispelling the remnants of unease that had burdened him all week. This place is a gem, and it's definitely more authentic than the galas, right? Their laughter flowed naturally, an effortless connection kindling like a flame. Jack felt the walls that had encased him, both personally and professionally, begin to dissolve. But a deeper truth loomed over him, and he knew he had to address it. "Listen, Sarah," he started, the playful banter giving way to something more serious. "I need to be honest with you. You're inspiring to me, and I've been holding back from telling you just how much this journey has meant." She tilted her head, inviting him to continue. Yet Jack felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken words settle in his throat. This was a moment of clarity, a rare chance to weave his aspirations with his feelings, both shrouded in layers of vulnerability. "Meeting you made me question my own path," he confessed. "I've spent too long living in the shadows, afraid of failure. I want to step up, not just as a mechanic, but as a leader at my garage. And I think I want you by my side through this, not just professionally, but personally too." Her eyes widened in surprise, and for just a heartbeat, Jack's heart trembled with uncertainty. Had he misread their connection? Had he misjudged the true depth of her feelings? "I never intended to come off as someone who could manage emotions so openly," he continued quickly, desperation lacing his words. "But you make me feel capable of more. I want to be someone who inspires not just you, but the people I work with." The pause felt heavy, but then the corner of Sarah's mouth quirked into a smile that transformed the tension in the air. "Jack, I appreciate your honesty. It's not easy to put yourself out there, especially when you've built up so many walls." Jack felt lighter at her response, knowing that he wasn't just revealing his ambitions. He was unveiling his vulnerabilities, a true mark of growth. "I know I can't just sit back anymore. I want to make this place better. And for that, I need to be authentic, with you and with myself." Her gaze softened, the distant flicker in her eyes signaling understanding. "I think you're doing exactly what you set out to do. I see that spark in you, the drive to foster something more than what's on the surface. And I want to be a part of that journey." As they talked, they danced around their respective fears and dreams. Jack spoke of the mentoring program he envisioned. Each word reinforced the belief that change began with vulnerability and strength. As the minutes slipped by, he felt his confidence solidify. A realization that reaching out was not merely a risk. It was intrinsic to becoming who he aspired to be. "This isn't just about fixing trucks or climbing the corporate ladder for me," he declared with newfound resolve. "It's about building a legacy of growth, of authenticity, something that we can resonate with together." Sarah nodded, her expression intertwining admiration and excitement. "Let's bring your vision to life, Jack. I believe in you. There's a fire in you that needs to be shared." For the first time in a long while, Jack felt that the weight he had been carrying could transform into something beautiful, solidifying not just his professional path, but the bond forming between him and Sarah. As they wrapped up their evening, each word exchanged reinforced a sense of solidarity. Together, they were facing the unknown, allowing their walls to slowly fall. Their journey was just beginning, yet every laugh and shared story echoed the essence of what lay ahead, the promise of vulnerability transforming into a powerful force for change. Jack stepped out of the diner, a gentle snowfall cascading around them, but he felt ignited with purpose. Leaning toward Sarah, he confidently declared, "Let's conquer this together, one step at a time." As they walked away, shoulders brushing, Jack knew he had bridged the gap between who he once was and who he was destined to become. No longer trapped in unspoken dreams, but finally stepping into the light of understanding and connection he had yearned for. Every step was now inflected with belief, not just in the process, but in the two of them. They were pioneers on their own paths, ready to redefine what success looked like for them, intertwined with authenticity and passion. And with each moment, they began crafting their legacy, one that was not defined by failures or the fear of inadequacies, but marked with a profound sense of purpose. Together, they bravely navigated the uncharted territories before them, knowing that just beyond the horizon, their shared dreams were waiting. Now, why are you still waiting? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. So don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.